China is currently experiencing a wave of extreme weather conditions. On December 9th, the Central Meteorological Observatory issued a double warning for blizzards and cold waves, forecasting significant snowfall and temperature drops exceeding 12 baris in regions including Beijing, Xi'an, and Shijiazhuang, which have all issued emergency notices in response. China's oil reserves only enough for 40 days without imports. With this little bit of oil reserved, if the enemy of China can cut the import source of oil, combined with bad weather China is now facing, the doom of CCP will happen. According to the paper, a severe temperature drop is expected in most parts of northern China. From December 9 to 11, regions such as northeast China, North China, and the Shanghai area will see temperature decreases of 6 to 10 degrees C, with some areas experiencing drops of more than 12 degrees C. North China and the Shanghai region are also expecting their first major snowfall of the winter, with some areas facing heavy blizzards. The Central Meteorological Observatory issued a blue blizzard warning at 10 a.m. on December 9th, predicting heavy snowfall to blizzards in parts of Shanxi, Shaanxi, Hebei, and Henan from 2 p.m. on December 9th to 2 p.m. on December 11th. Northern Henan is expected to see particularly heavy blizzards, with cumulative snowfall reaching 8 to 15 millimeters, and some areas up to 20 to 22 millimeters. Additionally, a blue cold wave warning has been issued, expecting temperature drops of 6 to 10 degrees C in parts of northwest, northeast, North China, Shanghai, Jianghan, Zhanghai, Jiangnan, and South China from 2 p.m. on December 9 to 8 a.m. on December 12th. Regions like Heilongjiang, southern North China, and Shanghai could see temperature drops exceeding 12 degrees. From December 9 to 11, areas in northeast North China, Shanghai, Jianghan, and Jiangnan are expected to experience temperature drops of 6 to 10 degrees C, with some parts of Heilongjiang, Shaanxi, Shanghai, and Hubei seeing drops of over 10 degrees C. According to Xi'an Network's video news on December 9th, blizzards and cold waves are imminent, with emergency notices issued in Beijing, Jinan in Shandong, Xi'an in Shanxi, Taiyuan in Shaanxi, and Shijiazhuang in Hebei, advising caution. Hebei province initiated a major meteorological disaster, blizzard level 4 emergency response at 6 p.m. on December 9th. On top of all of that, China is now facing an energy crisis. Extreme weather combined with oil shortage, China is in great danger. China's ravenous oil hunger outpaces domestic production. Up to 20% of electricity in China is produced using oil, and yet it is struggling to meet through its own domestic production. With the rise of increasingly bad weather, as well as an already big industry that China must maintain, China is in a dire situation. As manufacturing, construction, and transportation oil usage continues rising to fuel China's growth, the country's domestic crude oil output has failed to keep pace, especially during the mass blizzard, when households use the most electricity. China's oil fields and reserves, while substantial, are simply insufficient to satisfy the nation's swollen energy appetite. As you can see, China domestic production cannot match China's consumption. In fact, most of China's oil comes from imports. Several factors contribute to China's inability to adequately supply itself with domestically drilled oil. Much of China's undiscovered oil resources are located in remote, difficult-to-access regions and lack advanced extraction infrastructure. Additionally, China's complex geology makes drilling expensive and challenging compared to other oil-rich nations. Though China has the sixth largest proven oil reserves globally, its existing oil fields are maturing and yielding less. Intensive extraction has depleted regional wells, forcing China to rapidly expand to new areas. However, building modern drilling capacity requires huge capital outlays and takes years before oil begins flowing. As a result, China's domestic crude oil production has largely stagnated over the past decade, despite booming demand. In 2021, China averaged output of around 3.8 million barrels per day, an insignificant increase from output in 2012. Meanwhile, Chinese oil consumption has marched higher, surpassing 14 million barrels a day in 2021. With domestic demand rising much faster than domestic production capacity, China has been left with a widening oil supply gap that is increasingly dependent on imports to fill. Until major new oil fields are discovered and developed, China's thirst for oil will continue to outstrip what it can supply itself. China's oil reserves only enough for 40 days without imports. While China has aggressively stepped up purchases of foreign oil to satisfy surging domestic energy demand, it has comparatively little stored supply as a buffer should those imports get disrupted. Despite being the world's largest oil importer, China's strategic petroleum reserves would only be sufficient to meet national demand for around 40 days, according to Oxford Energy Institute. This 40-day figure means that in absence of any inbound shipments of crude oil, China would exhaust its emergency stockpiles in just over a month. It highlights a glaring energy security gap facing Chinese policymakers as imports now account for over 3/4 of the nation's massive oil consumption. In comparison to other major economies, Beijing has accumulated far less in terms of strategic oil reserves despite its deep dependence on imports. The United States and Japan currently have enough government-controlled oil inventories to last several hundred days without imports. Even India, which imports over 80% of its oil needs, has enough strategic reserves for around 70 days. With this little bit of oil reserved, if the enemy of China can cut the import source of oil, combined with bad weather China is now facing, the doom of CCP will happen. Knowing this, China is aiming to build up its SPR capacity to hold at least 100 days' worth of import coverage in the next few years. However, analysts note that much of the increase will come through commercial reserve bases owned by Chinese state-run oil companies instead of government-controlled national-level stockpiles that would better ensure supply in a crisis. Meanwhile, pressures are mounting on Chinese officials to rectify this strategic vulnerability and seriously bolster national petroleum inventories should the country face a supply shock or global oil availability crunch. While Beijing continues relying on massive import inflows to meet rising demand, expanding its safety cushion of oil reserves is critical. As long as China's domestic buffer remains thin, any hiccups with its foreign supplies would fast become an economic and political crisis. The Malacca Dilemma: How China's oil lifeline constrains military options. A narrow, pirate-infested waterway separating Malaysia and Indonesia has emerged as China's Achilles heel in both economic and military domains. The vast majority of China's imported oil, recently clocking in at a staggering 10.2 million barrels per day, flows through the congested Malacca Strait into Chinese ports. This key Asia trade artery supplying much of China's lifeblood has also become a strategic choke point limiting Beijing's military maneuverability. Over 80% of Chinese oil imports enter through the Malacca bottleneck, making steady, unimpeded transit passage absolutely critical. But while ships queue through this narrow maritime corridor, China lacks any meaningful control or policing authority over the strait. Instead, the safety of vessels here depend on cooperation between Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. This means in any outbreak of conflict, adversary navies like the United States would be in prime position to clamp down on the Malacca Strait and cut off Chinese oil tankers. Even a partial blockade on transit would have devastating impacts given China's extreme import dependency and minuscule 40-day strategic petroleum reserve buffer. The economic ripple effects and energy shortages would debilitate industrial output and civilian transportation. Recognizing such a glaring vulnerability, Beijing has pushed securing alternate import routes as a policy priority. Overland oil pipelines traversing Eurasia are being pursued, along with port expansion across Indian Ocean trade partners. However, analysts see limited progress reducing China's key strategic pressure point. Other import channels lack the capacity and transit security compared to Malacca. That leaves Chinese naval planners weighing uncomfortable scenarios of a maritime access denial strategy by enemies explicitly targeting China's oil imports. For now, Beijing lacks sufficient power projection capabilities to unilaterally break an enemy blockade halfway across the world. It also realizes that any conflict jeopardizing oil supplies could cripple domestic stability and the economy, while knock-on effects would paralyze military logistics. As such, defense of its Indian Ocean energy jugular decisively constrains China's military options. The reality remains that disrupted oil shipments, not battlefield casualties or hardware losses, would determine China's ability to prosecute modern war. This exposure down the Malacca choke point has emerged as a critical restraining factor on Beijing's regional security policy and tactical decisions. Essentially, China cannot afford escalatory wars that place its economic survival in others' hands. Oil import reliance, the unseen speed bump on China's path to military might. As Beijing continues marshaling economic and military resources in pursuit of an Indo-Pacific sphere of influence, conspicuously absent is any significant readiness for oil-related contingencies and wartime logistical burdens. China's imported oil addiction remains its Achilles heel, ensuring any conflict risks strategic catastrophe. The sobering reality is that China's military viability and wartime posture wholly depends on uninterrupted flows of foreign oil. Over 75% of China's massive 13 million barrels per day of oil demand relies on seaborne imports, predominantly coursing through maritime choke points like the distant Malacca Strait. Beijing has effectively outsourced its energy security to potentially unreliable exporters and transit passage through areas dominated by the U.S. Navy. This spans from Persian Gulf producers to the strategic waterways threading South China Sea islets. Any war puts these extended supply lines in spill range. Yet with just 40 days' worth of government-controlled petroleum stockpiles, even a partial disruption would fast erode China's strategic reserves. Comparing weighted import coverage, counterparts like Japan and the United States have amassed reserves equating to 900 plus and 365 days respectively. Without adequate reserves, choking China's oil imports for sustained periods would totally collapse domestic trucking, aviation, shipping, and industrial activity. And with the PLA still heavily dependent upon oil-intensive vehicles and weapon systems, military operations would soon grind to a halt alongside the wider economy. Recognizing this zero-sum energy vulnerability, Beijing has focused on securing its oil lifelines to preclude a crippling blockade scenario. But absent meaningful progress, professors at China's National Defense University have offered wise counsel: China cannot afford even a small-scale war at present. So for all its blister in the East and South China Seas, don't expect Beijing to intentionally initiate conflicts that jeopardize economic stability. Until energy autonomy catches up with superpower aspirations, imported oil will continue weighing as an albatross on China's military strategies. Navigating a minefield, securing China's Mideast oil flows. Beijing confronts a delicate balancing act, securing oil supplies from the turbulent Middle East, without being dragged into the region's perpetual conflicts. As China's largest source of imported crude, instability in the Middle East poses a direct risk to Chinese energy security. Protecting vital oil transit corridors has forced an uneasy deepening of ties with unpredictable partners. The Middle East provides over 40% of China's imported oil, mostly from regional powerhouses Saudi Arabia and Iraq. However, practically all this supply traversing through maritime choke points from the Straits of Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb out through the Indian Ocean. These narrow passageways off the coasts of Iran and Yemen lie in the crosshairs of warring factions who've already demonstrated a willingness to disrupt flows. The areas surrounding these strategic waterways have essentially become active conflict zones as Saudi, Iranian, and Emirati forces wage war by proxy. Meanwhile, civil strife in transit countries like Iraq introduces further uncertainty over China's oil routes. This leaves nearly half of China's daily petroleum needs vulnerable to regional skirmishes and militias often beyond sovereign control. In response, China has stepped up naval escorts from the Gulf of Aden down around the Horn of Africa to protect its tankers. But too overt a military footprint risks drawing the ire of littoral states wary of foreign interference. China also continues utilizing its Belt and Road Initiative to cultivate stronger economic and diplomatic ties with volatile Gulf monarchies like Saudi Arabia. Yet maintaining profitable relations with all sides amid the proxy battles and shifting allegiances has proven exceedingly difficult for Beijing. Western powers urging energy diversification away from the Middle East further complicates matters. With few alternatives to replace Arabian crude, China pinning its energy security on the Gulf will demand even more delicate diplomacy and power projection down the line. China's predicament with its oil shortage, exacerbated by the harsh weather conditions, signals a looming crisis of far-reaching consequences. The country stands at a precarious crossroads, with its energy security under severe threat. This crisis is not just an economic challenge, but a stark reminder of the inherent risks in relying heavily on imported oil, especially from geopolitically unstable regions. The situation is dire, with the potential to escalate into a national emergency that could cripple China's industrial might and economic stability. The ticking clock of the 40-day oil reserve is a grim countdown to a possible standstill of a major global power, highlighting the urgent need for a strategic overhaul in energy policies and practices.
Across China, snow continues to fall. In Shandong province, the snowfall is dense. In the extremely cold temperatures of Harbin, many people cannot use cars and have to resort to using horses. However, even the horse herds are trapped in the snow, suffering from hunger and thirst for a week. In Shanghai, the cold is so intense that roads are frozen. Throughout northern provinces of China, the temperatures are at least 5 degrees Celsius lower than the historical average. In Heilongjiang, the temperature dropped to 41.4 degrees Celsius, and even as low as 48 degrees Celsius, breaking previous records. Even southern provinces such as Guangxi, Guangdong, Hainan, Yunnan, central and southern Jiangsu, Shanghai, northern Guangdong, central and northern Guangxi are also engulfed in the extreme cold. In Beijing's sky, snow falls heavily, covering Tiananmen Square in a thick blanket. It seems that the entire central kingdom is under a vast expanse of pure white. Trapped on a frozen high-speed train. Let me show you. This is inside a residential building unit in the cold winter of northeast China. A completely different world. A scene unfamiliar to people from the south, with water splashing in the air, freezing into clouds, cold chain transportation, and a northeast blizzard. Outdoor yogurt frying, mops with frozen water, and stone-absorbing mops. The phone is frozen. It seems like something is happening. I feel there is some activity. No, it's your button. You press the button. All the small goldfish posted online are frozen, and I don't know if they can recover. How should we clean this up? A warm reminder. Don't leave your vacant house unattended. If your house is vacant, especially in winter, you must check the water supply. Just sun-dried clothes, show me. Give me a demonstration. Come up here quickly. The snow outside. Did you forget to close the windows? After playing mahjong for a while, just came back. Can't get into the house. This is the first time I've seen such a situation. The high-speed train stopped due to the snow and winter is coming. What's going on here? Eating instant noodles in northeast China. Although I'm not sure, people are facing another tough situation. It might improve by February next year. My house feels like an ice block due to the freezing wind, and it's so cold that it might freeze me tomorrow. The place seems more like an ice cellar than a home. Even with a bit of sunlight, the temperature is still below 15 degrees. Without the sun, it drops to around 12 or 13 degrees. I have to wear gloves to do any work. Is this really a home? Take a look. These past 2 days have been incredibly cold. I'm wearing a sweater inside my house, and it feels like I can't take it off. It's now 10:23 in the morning, and it's 21 degrees inside our house. I'm not sure if the house is too big or the heating is insufficient. The difference is significant. This is the result of the local government's negligence. The temperature is around -40 degrees. How can we ordinary people bear this? Dongbei Changchun, the coldest day, -27 degrees. Daily 10-kilometer check-in is completed. Look at how cold it is today. Oh my, it's -42 degrees. My snot has frozen into an ice sculpture. Look, this is the water we just fetched, now frozen into ice crystals. See, instantly, the gloves are stuck firmly, and I can't take them off now. Those who want to see the snowy scenery in the northeast, come on, it's in place, and so is the snow, all in place. Dug one, but this is the real one. The frozen golden hoop. After checking and sleeping overnight, the blankets are all layered to barely withstand the cold. In Hailar, with a temperature of -30 degrees, frost forms due to the school's heating, even on the canopy. Oh my, it's freezing. That's how I sleep. How can one endure such cold weather? Because in my blanket I have warmers, 4 on top and 2 underneath, with an additional 1 at the foot. Then I wear this down jacket to sleep without daring to take it off. Underneath, I stick warmers to my feet, usually 2 at night. This keeps my feet warm, and they won't get cold. Even my knees have warmers attached. It's bone-chilling. Oh well, my tent is outside. Yesterday and today, I'm about to send my car to the repair shop. I don't know if I can sleep in the tent tonight. It's really too cold. On the late night of December 18th, a 6.2 magnitude earthquake struck Xi'an County, Gansu province, with strong tremors felt in Shanghai, Lanzhou, Xi'an, and other areas. Shocking images and videos from the earthquake scene have emerged online. College students in Xi'an were caught off guard, running outside without enough time to put on clothes. According to netizens, The local temperature dropped to -17 degrees Celsius. Buildings shook when the earthquake hit Shanghai, and some university students ran out without enough time to dress, shivering in the cold wind. Inside a female dormitory at a school, beds shook violently, causing some girls to cry in fear. Shortly afterward, the entire dormitory building lit up, and students, in a panic, fled the building, running to an open space outside for shelter. During the earthquake in Gansu, many university students were trapped in hallways, with some students blocked in the dormitory stairwell because the main door was locked. Students smashed the glass on the door and kicked open the door frame, as shown in escape videos. Students from a high school in Gansu ran to an open space for shelter, enduring the cold winter night. Many students, wrapped in blankets, gathered in a circle and built a fire for warmth. Videos showed that during the earthquake, students residing in schools in Chengdu, Xi'an, and other places were terrified, screaming in their dormitories. The entire building shook, and many students, unable to put on clothes in time, ran downstairs barefoot, shivering in the cold outside. Due to the CCP's consistent cover-up of the truth, there are doubts that the actual casualties may be more severe than what has been publicly disclosed. According to the China Earthquake Network Center's official measurement, a 6.2 magnitude earthquake occurred in Diminishing County, Ningxia City, Gansu Province, at 23:59 on December 18th, with a depth of 10 kilometers. Multiple aftershocks occurred near the epicenter until 0:48 on December 19th, recording 32 aftershocks, with the largest magnitude being 4.0 and 3 aftershocks between 3 and 3.9. Reports indicate that some houses collapsed in the vicinity of Diminishing County, and in Dahujia town, 3 villages experienced house collapses with people trapped. Videos from netizens and surveillance cameras show intense shaking of the ground in the earthquake zone, with water from residents' fish tanks splashing out. On a freezing night at -12 degrees Celsius, local people were terrified and fled for their lives. Eyewitnesses described the moment of the earthquake as feeling like being thrown up after the surging of ocean waves. Some rushed down 16 floors with their families, while others ran out with blankets, exposing their bare arms. Some residents mentioned that many buildings in that area had collapsed, and several people were injured. Local residents in Lanzhou, Xining, Xi'an, and other places expressed strong feelings of the earthquake. A local resident, Xiao Ye, said that many residents have come out to the streets, but some have not because the weather is too cold. After the earthquake, continuous aftershocks were recorded 275 times until 6 a.m. on the 19th. Local surveillance footage and footage shot by residents show a tragic situation with entire buildings collapsing in some places. After the earthquake, both Gansu Province and Shanghai Province suffered severe casualties. Many surveillance videos capturing the moment of the earthquake have been circulated on the internet, showing houses shaking instantly with significant amplitude. In some footage, residents' houses shake, causing items to fall one after another. Some walls even fall off. In a video shot by a netizen, the scene is distressing with collapsed houses, blood on the ground, and residents seemingly lifeless. There is no response. In another video, after the earthquake in Gansu Ningxia on the 19th, a woman with a child wrapped in a blanket seeks refuge in an open area. She is still in shock, recounting her experience of fleeing during the earthquake, trembling all over. "Oh my goodness, it was really terrifying, Mom. The whole house was shaking and everything felt blocked. My hands and legs were trembling before this. Oh, look at the courtyard, how much dust there is. We were so scared. I wanted to run out, and then there was a shaking on the mountain, and the whole house was trembling. This earthquake is really huge. Oh, my legs are shaking. My hands are shaking too. Oh, I'm really scared. I can't sleep tonight. The earthquake was so close, just 1 or 2 seconds. 3 seconds, maybe. It should be around 5 seconds. 5 seconds. When we ran out, there wasn't much time, maybe just a minute. Oh, it was often not right. Hurry up and run. Oh, my hands are shaking too much. We might be living next to this mountain. It's really dangerous. My sister and I slept in the room inside, and the whole corridor was shaking. Oh, I was so scared. My sister and I wrapped ourselves in clothes, wrapped in a blanket, and we were sweating so much. Oh, we were blaming each other. Oh, what should we do just now? Oh, I blocked it. On December 19th, the day after the earthquake in Gansu, videos circulated on mainland China's internet showing that a few days before the earthquake, a large group of black birds were hovering and stopping in the local sky. Some people thought this was a natural warning. This topic briefly trended on mainland social media but was quickly removed from the trending list. On the 19th, the trending list on mainland social media briefly included the earthquake, and 2 days ago, netizens filmed a large group of blackbirds hovering. After this topic gained attention, it was quickly removed from the trending list again. Videos on multiple social media platforms showed a large group of blackbirds in the sky a couple of days before the earthquake in Gansu, either perched on power lines or circling in groups. This video has attracted the attention of netizens, and some believe it is a natural warning. In the face of the dual crises of the earthquake and heavy snowfall, the Chinese government appears remarkably indifferent, leaving the people of China to bear the brunt of the suffering. The snow blankets the nation, freezing even the most basic aspects of life. The icy grip of winter extends its reach to provinces far and wide, with temperatures plummeting well below historical averages, shattering records in Heilongjiang at a bone-chilling 48 degrees Celsius. The scenes of distress and hardship multiply as the snow encases both northern and southern provinces, with citizens enduring extreme cold and struggling to navigate frozen landscapes. Meanwhile, the government's response to these crises remains alarmingly lackluster, leaving the people to face the consequences unaided. As the earthquake strikes Xi'an County, Gansu Province, the government's negligence becomes even more apparent. The chilling images and videos circulating online reveal the terror and chaos unleashed upon the population. College students in Xi'an, caught off guard, run outside inadequately dressed, shivering in the frigid wind. Dormitories become scenes of panic, with beds violently shaking and students fleeing in fear. Yet, the government's cover-up and downplaying of the true extent of the disaster raised doubts about the reported casualties. The earthquake's aftermath exposes the vulnerabilities in the country's infrastructure, with collapsed buildings, trapped students, and shattered lives. The people are left to grapple with the harsh reality of natural disasters without adequate support or assistance from those in power. As China's economic woes continue to worsen, the authorities, seemingly powerless to address the issues, have taken an unprecedented step to silence online critics, forbidding any negative discussions on the economy. The Chinese Ministry of State Security has declared criticizing the economy a national security issue, prompting public mockery and raising concerns that foreign investments might flee even faster. On December 15th, the Ministry of State Security released an article on its WeChat public account titled, "Building a Resilient Economic Security Barrier for National Security." The article claims that economic security is a crucial component of national security. It summarizes criticisms labeled as slandering China's economy, including accusations of replacing development with security, excluding foreign investments, and suppressing private enterprises. The piece elevates criticizing the economy to a national security issue and threatens to crack down on those with ulterior motives. Simultaneously, some Chinese internet influencers appear to have received notices from authorities. Screenshots circulating online indicate that on December 14th, Weibo Finance and Weibo Stocks notified influencers to pay attention to the tone of their speech in recent posts and refrain from making any negative remarks about the economy. Weibo Legal also issued a group notice warning that the handling of criticisms of the economy would be severe, urging users not to cross the red line. Some well-known figures have been directly silenced, such as Liu Jipeng, an expert on China's joint stock companies and director of the Capital and Finance Research Institute at China University of Political Science and Law, who has been banned from speaking and following on platforms like Douyin, Weibo, and Toutiao since December 7th, and his Weibo account has disappeared. On December 17th, commentator Zhou Xiaohui wrote in Epoch Times that the Ministry of State Security elevating criticizing the economy to a national security issue and issuing threats on financial and economic matters reflect two major problems. It indicates that China's economy is in dire straits, and the Chinese Communist Party is helpless, resorting to censorship. As netizens commented, this is tantamount to official recognition that China's economy is beyond salvation. On the other hand, it highlights that the CCP leader is paranoid about security issues, openly using national security forces to intimidate those against Xi Jinping, serving as a glaring example of the party's insecurity. Economic downward spiral. Xi Jinping's visit to Shanghai coincides with A-share plummet. It was just last week when Xi Jinping visited Shanghai for 3 days, inspecting the futures exchange and various technology centers. Liu Baoji, the host of Taiwan's TV program Critical Moment, mentioned that Xi Jinping is deeply concerned about Shanghai's economy and, by extension, China's overall economic situation. His visit aimed to boost the country's economic development. However, unexpectedly, the Shanghai Stock Exchange did not cooperate. Instead of rising, the market took a nosedive, plummeting below 3,000 points in a fierce battle for survival. Xi Jinping, hoping to uplift China's economic prospects, faced a surprising setback as the Shanghai Stock Exchange demonstrated a lack of cooperation. Rather than witnessing growth, the market exhibited a frenzy of decline. Currently, Shanghai's stock market is in a freefall, dropping over 1,000 points and facing a critical struggle. This unexpected turn of events in Shanghai's stock market prompts a broader concern. The impact is not limited to Shanghai alone. It is now affecting Hong Kong as well. Observers note a significant development. The stock markets in Taipei and Hong Kong are showing signs of a golden cross, which already occurred last week. However, the discrepancy between the two is widening, with Hong Kong's market hovering around 16,327, while Taipei's has surged to 11,728. This growing gap suggests that the divergence between the two markets will continue to widen. The global business media is echoing the sentiment that China is caught in a frightening economic downward spiral. All indicators are showing an unlimited decline, contributing to an alarming and vicious cycle. Endless plunge in A-share market. Hu Xijin's stock trading records, over 40,000 yuan in losses in 6 months. Hu Xijin, who boldly entered the A-share market in June this year, has faced a continuous string of losses in his stock trading venture. Initially allocating 100,000 yuan to his account, he later declared additional investments. In September, during a live broadcast, he expressed his aspiration to be a bull, like Warren Buffett, and even mentioned hoping to earn enough for a premium school district property in Shanghai. However, starting in October, Hu Xijin's stock trading endeavors descended into a pit of persistent losses. On October 18th, he posted on his Weibo account revealing that his total floating losses had surpassed 30,000 yuan for the first time. By October 23rd, his losses exceeded 40,000 yuan, and now the figure stands at 42,000 yuan. Commenting on Hu Xijin's stock trading journey, commentator Chu Lin published an article on November 17th titled "Hu Xijin has no destiny in stock trading, yet has contracted the disease," stating that Hu Xijin's recent blog posts revealed emotions of disappointment and anxiety, expressing concerns about future trends. The article notes that although Xi'an initially gained over 10,000 yuan in personal account profits after entering the market, as the stock market continued to weaken, his stock account losses expanded. Xi'an, who once fervently advocated faithful investment, shifted to urging against, allowing the stock market to continue its downward spiral. China's economy exposed, resembling the Soviet Union in the 1970s. China's economy has recently revealed a series of troubling data points, reminiscent of the Soviet Union in the 1970s. With multiple sectors issuing a flurry of documents, is there any way to reverse the situation? Professor Su Chenggang, a renowned scholar specializing in the long-term study of the Chinese economy, believes that this is a systemic issue that has been exposed. Mechanisms that once facilitated China's rapid economic development have one by one been lost, leading to a long-term slowdown in China's economic growth, akin to the Soviet Union in the post-1970s era. Another wealth management giant in China faces collapse. Xi'an clients rally for rights protection. On December 17, 2023, the Shanghai-based wealth management firm Xi'an was hit by news of a potential collapse, leading numerous investors to rally for their rights at the company's headquarters. Despite negotiations between the company's management and investors, share prices continued to plummet. This incident is considered another seismic event in the Chinese financial market following the China Evergrande Group crisis. On December 14th, Xi'an Wealth, self-proclaimed as China's third-largest third-party wealth management service provider, announced on Nasdaq that the wealth management products it distributed faced redemption issues, with the management unable to reach agreements on deferred payments with the concerned clients. According to reports, at the close of the U.S. stock market on December 15th, Xi'an Holdings witnessed a nearly 16% plunge, closing at $2.77 per share, resulting in a market capitalization reduction to $77.66 million, making it one of the Chinese concept stocks with the largest decline that day. Compared to the previous day's closing price, the market capitalization shrunk by over $14 million overnight. In reality, Xi'an Holdings stock had been in a downward spiral since December 8th. Calculated from the closing price of $6.65 on December 7th, the stock experienced an accumulated decline of 58.3% in the past 5 trading days. On the 15th, multiple videos circulated online, showing a large number of investors rushing to the headquarters of Xi'an Wealth to safeguard their rights. Xi'an chairman Han Hongwei met with the investors, pledging not to let financial advisors and clients suffer losses, but stating that it would take time to step-by-step resolve the issues. When someone asked, "How long will it take approximately?" Han responded, "I will let you know, but I cannot answer that right now." The Beijing property market is experiencing a precipitous decline with 170,000 second-hand homes listed for sale as China's economic outlook dims. The plunging prices make it challenging to close deals, even with buyers negotiating discounts of up to 1 million yuan on properties priced in the millions. Experts predict that Beijing's property prices will continue to decline. Beijing livestream host I Am Who I Am. More than 90% of houses in Beijing are declining. Beijing livestream host Xiaoqi talks real estate. Do you know how crazy the Beijing property market has become? In Beijing, you must not randomly buy houses. In recent times, many mainland livestream hosts have revealed a drastic decline in the prices of second-hand homes in Beijing, with numerous properties facing difficulty in selling even after substantial price reductions. According to Xiaoqi Talks Real Estate, one of the hosts listed a property for sale around mid-August with an initial asking price of about 9.5 million yuan, but recently reduced it to 8.3 million yuan without finding a buyer. Another live stream host mentioned that a neighbor's property has been listed for sale for 3 years but still hasn't been sold. The Chinese National Bureau of Statistics has been accused of falsification as it claims to be refining the methodology for calculating youth unemployment rates. On December 15th, the NBS released data stating that the urban surveyed unemployment rate in China for November was 5%, adding that they are currently perfecting the relevant methods and systems for youth unemployment rate and will release it in a timely manner once the related statistical work is further improved. In July of this year, the NBS reported a youth unemployment rate as high as 21.3%, but starting from August, the official agency ceased disclosing youth unemployment rates. There are suspicions that the youth unemployment situation in China has become so severe that the Communist Party finds it challenging to disclose accurate figures. Wang Gang, an associate professor at a Chinese university, expressed to the new Tang dynasty that the government's data on employment for university graduates is fabricated and not trustworthy. He explained that the government pressures universities, and in turn, universities pressure teachers to manipulate employment data to present a more favorable picture of the job market for graduates. Professor Xu Chenggang of Stanford University's China Economic Research Center told Radio Free Asia that the official discontinuation of reporting youth unemployment rates is due to contradictions with the economic growth data. While official figures suggest a 20% youth unemployment rate, independent economists within the country estimate it to be as high as 40%. It seems illogical for the economy to be growing positively in the face of high unemployment rates. An era in China has come to an end, and Xi Jinping's prioritization of political struggles has damaged the economy. Current affairs commentator Wu Zijia states that due to the Communist Party's approach to governing the country, there is a regression to ancient times under Xi Jinping, returning to the traditional concept of the Communist Party, putting political struggles first and economic development second. Xi Jinping is quite unique in that he lacks a clearly defined economic policy. Currently, all foreign businesses have left, and exports have also declined.
A wave of business closures and economic uncertainty has swept across China in recent months. China's empty shops and quiet malls aren't the only signs of hardship. Closed factories and soaring white-collar unemployment reveal cracks in the foundation underlying decades of China's stellar growth. Multiple wider factors also shadow hopes for any near-term recovery, from recurring COVID-19 lockdowns and the bursting property bubble to U.S. technology sanctions and demographic decline. For businesses small and large across China, the environment looks set to test resilience for years to come. Adidas bets big and closes fast. The soon-shuttered Adidas outlet, situated in Shenzhen's gleaming Futian business hub, served as a striking emblem for the brand's ambitions in China. The three-story megastore spanned over 3,200 square meters, marking Adidas's first-ever highest-level flagship location in South China. Its prime real estate underscored the store's strategy to fuse sports culture, scientific innovation, and immersive experiences under one roof. Creative retail theater took center stage, from augmented reality fitting rooms to engage customers digitally, to in-venue build-outs of iconic stadiums, letting shoppers visualize product performance. The outlet further leaning into Adidas's tradition of high-tech design, stocking crowdsourced lines co-created by its China product teams to better match local athletic needs and fashion preferences. And running through the entire concept was a foundation of data-driven personalization, using purchasing insights and engagement analytics to tailor products, spaces, and interactions to each visitor. When the flagship store opened with great fanfare in early 2021, its marriage of bold, human-centered design, digital-first shopping, and community-powered products aimed to set retail trends across China's hyper-competitive sporting goods industry for years to come. However, 2 years later, Adidas stunned shoppers by confirming the outlet's imminent closure. Despite significant investment aiming to claim Shenzhen's passion for active lifestyles, the site failed to generate sufficient sales volume and customer traffic to justify its size and prime location. While the brand has achieved scalable success selling into China's e-commerce ecosystems, brick-and-mortar retail has proven a harsher proposition even for dominant multinational merchandisers. As consumer wallets tighten amid the country's economic downturn, the flagship's closure underscores how Chinese shoppers' shifting habits pose an existential test for traditional stores. Adidas discounts race to bottom as China spending stalls. Adidas witnessed China sales plummet 85% in the weeks after Lunar New Year as COVID-19 ravaged consumer mobility and willingness to spend. The plunge spotlights the double blow from both supply and demand woes now battering Western brands across the Chinese market. With over half its stores sitting shutter-irred, Adidas turned to increasingly desperate discounts to resuscitate sales. The sportswear maker admitted dumping merchandise at up to 70% off list prices, slicing 1,999 yuan sneakers to just 679 yuan within months in outlets from Wuhan to Shenzhen. Yet the deepening price cuts have failed to cure the underlying ailment. Adidas's crown jewel store in Shenzhen, the largest of over 6,000 across China, confirmed its imminent closure this week, unable to weather the perfect storm of mobile-first shoppers and shrinking wallets. The three-story retail flagship expected its augmented reality fittings rooms, on-site stadium replicas, and crowdsourced apparel drops to anchor customer experiences. But the outlet bled cash as consumers nationwide tightened belts. Rival Puma echoed similar trades-offs between self-inflicted revenue wounds from promotions and maintaining visibility. The brand cautioned investors to brace for weaker-than-expected earnings in 2020 as store closures snowballed. And the IMF sounded alarms that extended supply chain paralysis and plunging global production could kick economic growth down another notch worldwide. The crisis leaves little optimism Beijing can rely on exports to fuel a demand-starved recovery. Instead, observers believe China's consumer spending may face a long winter as households hold back and e-commerce players keep accruing market share. That poses a deepening challenge for multinational giants reliant on the world's largest retail arena, where adaptation speed now separates winners from famous failures. Belt tightening reaches China's big spenders. As China's economy loses steam, even the nation's previously free-spending upper-middle class has begun to cautiously watch wallet outflows. This signals a concerning shift for domestic consumption as the post-pandemic reopening hoped to fuel growth by unleashing pent-up demand across higher income tiers. Formerly the prime target demographic for luxury automakers, apparel brands, and condo developers, China's white-collar urbanites powered discretionary spending over the past decade. But as fear of job and financial loss spreads, these groups have notably dialed back shopping trips and big-ticket purchases since early 2022. Whereas middle-class consumers once thought little of buying designer brand clothing or accessories in bulk, the new norm sees shoppers making cross-brand price comparisons, investigating resale value, or even postponing new wardrobe purchases. This mental shift away from unrestrained consumption habits affects not just retailers but also malls, hospitality firms, and leisure operators expecting well-heeled patrons to return post-lockdowns. And the defensive purchasing holds true across purchasing categories, even those formerly resilient to economic fluctuations. Realtors note hesitation towards completing deals on second homes despite mortgage rates falling for months on end. GIMs observe white-collar professionals downgrade from unlimited memberships or premium personal training packages to save hundreds in annual fees. The lingering uncertainty about China's growth trajectory, especially privately held sectors relying on discretionary spending, drives more citizens to respond proactively. Job security no longer looks guaranteed even in previously safe industries, and former big spenders choose self-insurance by trimming expenses and avoiding large outlays. Their cautious mentality looks set to endure until clearer skies appear. China firms slash costs to survive slowdown. As China's economic engine downshifts, companies both large and small have swiftly moved to cut costs in hopes of riding out falling sales. Electronics factories, restaurants, chains, and retailers alike have taken knives to expenditures, including inventory, new hires, and physical footprints. Export-reliant manufacturers were among the first to shrink operations this year as overseas appetite waned. Factories producing toys, clothing, and personal electronics ratcheted back production plans and purchases of raw inputs. Those relying on domestic consumption also slowed assembly lines amid evaporating discretionary purchases. Despite the flexible steps to align supply with slowing demand, the resulting inventory drawdowns have negatively impacted downstream retailers. Shopping outlets already dealing with reduced consumer foot traffic have also needed to contend with shortages of popular products. The supply crunch subsequently damaged prospects for brick-and-mortar chains, from apparel sellers to appliance showrooms during an already challenging period. The imbalance between production cuts and still elevated commercial rental costs has accelerated store shutter rates this year, and the oversupply in certain sectors like new condominiums will take even longer to unwind. Economic observers believe property construction and sales will lag as developers hesitate on future projects, while existing empty units must also fill. That glut constrains the industry's ability to drive growth. Overall, the response from Chinese operators emphasizes short-term resilience over revenues or expansion. But the longer consumer confidence and spending power remains depressed, the harder it becomes for many firms to simply circle the wagons. Dubious on when headwinds might shift, business managers admit they must simply endure the storm. Shutdown tide swamps China firms. The extent of China's surging business closures emerged into stark relief this year, with over 460,000 companies shutting down in 2023, alongside 320,000 brick-and-mortar stores. The retreat spans both the country's industrial base and consumer-facing retailers, signaling extensive economic struggle. Figures from ride-share platforms capture the sharp consumption dip from COVID restrictions and tightening wallets. Once hot startups like Didi witnessed user bases shrivel by over 75% between 2021 and 2022. Ctrip posted nearly identical plunges over the period. Contrasting the decay in mobility and spending power, sites like Boss Zhipin facilitating white-collar job-seeking reported surging traffic. The influx points to legions of former business owners now scouring for employment after shuttering ventures, even before reaching retirement age. The sheer shutdown rate so far in 2023 already eclipsed the pandemic year of 2020. And the numbers continue rising by the week, with 7.8 million Chinese now shouldering high-interest consumer loans, often used to bridge income gaps after job loss. Economic experts believe the business closure tsunami has not yet peaked as the country wrestles with aftershocks from the real estate bubble collapse and diminished global appetite for exports. Most predict another 12-24 months of mounting insolvencies, especially if COVID resurgences require new lockdown orders. For now, Mere survival tops the agenda of companies facing the blizzard of negative demand shocks and financial uncertainty. The question preoccupying directors hangs on whether their firm can outlast the worst before China's economy rebounds. China growth projections darken on global headwinds. Expert analyses calling China's economic trajectory point to substantial declines, from the nearly 6% annual growth target to below 5% in 2023, falling further to around 3% by the end of this decade. The projections see the country's consumer and export engines facing an extended period bogged down by domestic and international factors. Investment bank Goldman Sachs proved most bearish on China's outlook, predicting growth sliding to just 4.8% by 2024 in the absence of a vigorous recovery. Research teams highlight depressed household spending, factory output slowdowns, and job market pressures holding back a rebound. Demographics also dim the country's production potential as the workforce shrinks thanks to the now abandoned one-child policy. The aging population is set to drag on China's annual expansion through the 2020s before the decline plateaus around 3% into 2030. Other forecasts remain slightly more positive, buoyed by expectations around infrastructure investment and renewable energy builds kickstarting activity levels. However, international headwinds, including trade disputes and technology sanctions, impose formidable barriers. The consensus suggests China will struggle regaining prior robust GDP rates near 6% as enjoyed in 2021 before the property bubble burst. Global economic integration likewise shows signs of fraying amid geopolitics, curbing export lifelines. For major multinational companies used to targeting unrestrained growth in the Chinese arena, the downgraded projections signal a challenging period lies ahead across consumer goods, machinery, autos, and other sectors. Navigating the maturing economy could demand long-term perspective rather than hoping temporary measures juice demand. Chinese experts sound alarm on economic trajectory. Despite Chinese policymakers downplaying external risks, the country's leading economists highlight severe near-term challenges tied to worsening global economic fluctuations. They describe a landscape still rife with pitfalls even after years of attempted structural reforms. Pessimism centers on deteriorating trade environments should major economies slide into recession, which would reverberate upon China's eventual growth recovery. Meanwhile, currency volatility and tightening financial conditions could also trigger destabilizing capital outflows. Domestically, consumption lags while the property contraction drags on growth and construes local government budgets. Declines in land sales and housing investment eliminates previous pillars of GDP growth. In response to the economic threats, experts call for measures restoring market and investor confidence while avoiding growth overheating. They recommend gradual structural shifts emphasizing high-quality expansion. However, economists privately note substantial roadblocks persist in overhauling China's credit-intensive, investment-led economic model. Difficult reforms needed to boost productivity and innovation lag while debt mounts across sectors. They conclude that substantial uncertainty will envelop China's growth trajectory in coming years as external demand weakens and internal imbalances strain stability. Only disciplined reforms aligned to market principles can catalyze emergence from the middle-income trap. The warnings of respected economic advisors clash with official rhetoric downplaying risks. But ongoing business closures signal China still faces an arduous climb to return the economy to prior robust growth rates, near 6%. How Beijing balances its reform agenda with stability will prove decisive. As China stares into the economic abyss, any hopes for stabilization seem pierced by the falling knives of external trade paralysis and domestic contagion. Swathes of enterprises now fatefully take their final gasps, bloated with unproductive loans and starved of sales. Such endings herald yet wider misery ahead as their workers join swelling, jobless queues.